Well, this okay. I'm used to that.
Hello, this is Michael from the Audible Local Ledger in Mashpee, Massachusetts, reading selected articles from the Provincetown banner on Thursday, May 7th, 2026. First article: Baby Boom. Record right whale calving reported may reflect healthier population. An article by Heather McCarran of the Cape Cod Times USA Today Network. For critically endangered North Atlantic right whales, every birth matters. This year there were 23, a surge that's offering scientists a rare moment of optimism, but not full relief. The 2025-26 calving season, which runs from mid-November through mid-April, is now officially over, and the New England Aquarium is reporting that it saw the highest number of births since 2009 and the fourth highest on record. Researchers say the number is encouraging, but what's behind it may matter just as much. Shorter calving intervals offer hope. Quote, while a healthy right whale can give birth every 3 to 4 years, we had been seeing nearly 10 years between calves for some females. Many of this year's moms have had shorter intervals. 18 of them previously gave birth within the last 6 years, giving us hope that they may be healthier and can help grow the population faster, end quote, said Amy Warren, scientific program officer in the New England Aquarium's Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life. At least 18 of the 23 mother-calf pairs have been spotted in Massachusetts waters so far this spring, with researchers observing a significant number of them in Cape Cod Bay. Scientists with the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown said the regional picture reinforces the broader trend for whales, which number about 384 individuals, according to the most recent population estimate released last October. Ryan Schosberg, a researcher and aerial observer with the center's right whale ecology program, said it's especially encouraging that the strong number of births is paired with no known deaths among this year's calves. Quote, definitely a reason for some cautious optimism for the species, end quote, he said. Quote, hopefully they continue to stay safe through their first year and beyond, as the juvenile years remain a particularly vulnerable period for these animals, end quote. Vulnerabilities are evident for juvenile whales. The vulnerability is already evident. Schosberg said that there have been 2 confirmed deaths this year of juvenile right whales born in previous seasons. An unnamed 2023 calf off Virginia and in a 2022 calf scientists had named Division off North Carolina. The season also reflects a wide range of reproductive patterns, according to the scientists. While some females are giving birth closer to expected intervals, others are starting much later in life. Quote, North Atlantic right whales typically don't begin calving until about age 10, though it can often be much later. One of this year's first-time mothers, number 3760, Caliosity Back, just had her first calf at age 19, Schosberg said. Spotting mother-calf pairs, the most we've ever recorded. In Cape Cod Bay, he said, the team has seen an unusually high number of mother-calf pairs this season. The Provincetown observers have cited 14 of the pairs themselves during regular aerial surveys. Quote, the most we've ever recorded in a single season, end quote, he said. This is despite 2026 being one of the lowest spring seasons in terms of total right whale presence in the bay over a decade, really underscoring the importance of the area for this vulnerable demographic, end quote. The 14 right whale mothers seen with their newborns have included Slalom, Juno, Mantis, Boomerang, Triplago, Binary, Skittle, Uka, Millipede, Squilla, Caliosity Back, Bermuda, Bocce, and Champagne. Quote, several of them are still in the area. with sightings spread throughout Cape Cod Bay and Massachusetts Bay, extending as far north as Jeffrey's Ledge, end quote, he said. Researchers have also tracked additional mother-calf pairs further north. Quote, we've also documented number 1243 Magic and number 3157 Cascade with their calves on multiple days off the north shore of Massachusetts around Jeffrey's Ledge, unquote, Schosberg said. Quote, in total, we have observed 191 right whales this season, including 164 in Cape Cod Bay, end quote. A strong year class, but uncertainty remains. For Daniel Palacios, director of the Center for Coastal Studies Right Whale Ecology Program, the season stands out, but only in the context of what comes next. Quote, in all, this is very good news, and as long as there are no additional mortalities this year, this will be a, quote, strong year class for the right whales, end quote, he said. But, quote, we need many more years like this for the species to have a chance of recovering. He said the number of mother-calf pairs seen locally reinforces the significance of Cape Cod Bay for right whales. Quote, the fact that so many of the mother-calf pairs have shown up in Cape Cod Bay underscores the importance of the bay as a late winter-spring nursery for right whales, end quote. Still, recent weeks have raised new questions about the whale distribution. After a strong start earlier this season, Palacios said, quote, there have been very few whales in the bay for the last few weeks, end quote. Perhaps some of them will continue to trickle in before the end of the season in a few weeks, or perhaps they are all going somewhere else, end quote, he said. We've been seeing a bunch of them in Massachusetts Bay to the north of us. We won't know the balance until the fall, once all the teams are done with their tallies and have analyzed their data, end quote. Despite the encouraging birth count, the wider outlook remains uncertain. North Atlantic right whales continue to face significant threats, including entanglement in traditional fishing gear and vessel strikes as part of an ongoing, unusual mortality event that NOAA has been tracking since 2017. Quote, it is hopeful to see 23 new calves born this year, end quote, said the aquarium's Warren. But, quote, their survival into adulthood is still a long journey ahead in an ocean with many dangers and obstacles, end quote, end of article. Next article, protest listening sessions at community college. An article by Zane Razak of the Cape Cod Times USA Today Network. West Barnstable. A row of empty folding chairs lined the sidewalk outside Cape Cod Community College during a protest on Wednesday, a symbolic call from faculty and staff for a, quote, seat at the table that they say was missing from a recent leadership shakeup. Last week, the Board of Trustees unanimously backed the appointment of Ellen Kennedy, president of Berkshire Community College for the past 14 years, as interim president. Former President John Cox retired in mid-March after he was placed on administrative leave in October following a student complaint that led to an investigation into his conduct. Among those at the, quote, standout were students Maggie Murray, 19 of Duxbury, Ashley Ryan, 19 of Carver. They said students on campus were shocked and confused when details about Cox's conduct became public. Murray said she wants college leadership, quote, to take into account what students and professors are saying, end quote. Without us, there would be no school, she said. Business professor and president of the Cape Cod Community College Association, Michael Betlich, also attended the protest. He said his union had asked the board to hold off on a decision to give staff time to weigh in. Those requests were not granted. What we wanted was for them to listen to our concerns, said Betlich. You don't have to say anything to listen. Trustees proceeded with the vote, with the president saying a delay could jeopardize securing the candidate. Kennedy visited the campus on Wednesday to attend some listening sessions and met with protesters. Betlich called her a, quote, breath of fresh air after speaking with her. An investigation found Cox did not violate affirmative action or discrimination policies, but did engage in conduct deemed inappropriate and unprofessional. Investigators found that the relationship was not sexual, but that Cox showed a lack of judgment and engaged in inappropriate and excessive contact far beyond a typical academic relationship, according to the Boston Globe, which obtained a copy of the report. Betlich noted that Cox and the student reportedly exchanged thousands of text messages and that the chief wellness officer, Maura Ware, was also placed on leave after the investigation found that she had not reported his behavior to the college. Quote, I know I personally was appalled with everything going on, end quote. Librarian Jessica Jordan said, quote, it's been a lot of silence. Everything started back in October, and we heard absolutely nothing for months, end quote. Cape Cod Community College is set to embark on a national search for its new permanent president. The standout was originally planned as part of a May Day union-related demonstrations to call attention to long-standing concerns around compensation and staffing across the community college system. Betlich said stagnant wages have made it increasingly difficult to attract and retain qualified employees, saying it would, quote, help the college if we could offer more competitive salaries and wages, end quote. We're number one in education, but that dirty little secret is that community colleges are severely underfunded, said Betlich. At a listening session, Kennedy said she's excited about being place-based in the interim role, focusing less on external demands that often accompany being a college president, and instead plans to engage directly with the campus community and learn from students and staff. I'm an all-in person, she said. End of article. Next article. Search for crew member who fell from ship off Wellfleet suspended, an article by Zain Razak. A search for a crew member who was seen falling from a cruise ship off the eastern coast of Wellfleet late Saturday night was suspended on Sunday and has not yet resumed, according to the U.S. Coast Guard. Quote, the active search is still suspended pending new information, said the Coast Guard on Monday, April 27th. Coast Guard Sector Southeastern New England said on Sunday that cruise ship Norwegian Breakaway had reported a crew member was captured falling from the ship on a security camera. The incident happened about 12 miles east of Wellfleet. The cruise ship went back to the last known location of the person and deployed its rescue boat and life rings. A Coast Guard MH-60 helicopter arrived with the search around 1 a.m. A crew from the Coast Guard's Provincetown station was also offering assistance. Later Sunday morning, an HC-144 aircraft took over the aerial search, said the U.S. Coast Guard, and searched with the station's Provincetown crew. Quote, the United States Coast Guard has taken over the search and rescue operation and released the vessel to continue the voyage, said a spokesman for Norwegian Cruise Line. The safety, security, and well-being of our crew is our highest priority. Quote, our thoughts are with the crew members' family during this difficult time. As of Sunday midday, the ship was docked in Boston, according to online ship locators. The cruise ship had spent the past week in Bermuda, end of article. Next article. Construction likely at Orleans Rotary as state targets flood risk, an article by Susan Vaughn of the Cape Cod Times USA Today Network. Eastham residents were anxious to hear about the proposed changes to the Route 6 Orleans Rotary, part of which is in their town, packing a meeting room at the Eastham Public Library on Thursday night, April 30th. They were not all pleased with the options. The State Department of Transportation officials from the Highway Division presented four possible plans, including one that would leave the rotary the same but raise it, and three plans with smaller roundabouts. The estimated cost of the changes is $7 million, according to the department. Flooding projections by 2050. Doug Johnson, program manager with the Highway Division, said the purpose of the changes was to address flooding projections in the future, 2050 and beyond. He said the center of the rotary is a salt marsh now. The four proposals are the result of a Cape Cod Commission study of low-lying roads on the Cape that were narrowed down from 17 since the project started in 2023, he said. The projected start of construction on the rotary is early 2030. Quote, "The flooding will occur if we don't do something," end quote, Johnson said, and added that the rotary and Route 6 would become impassable. He showed a graphic of the high tide at the Austin Smith Sanctuary on the west side of the rotary and the Smith Lane underwater every day at high tide. In addition to addressing the flooding, Johnson said the rotary changes would also address safety issues in the rotary, where rear-end collisions and crashes from merging vehicles are most common accidents. These changes would also modernize the rotary area, he said. Johnson briefly described each plan projected on a large screen, then asked the residents to look at the plans on easels around the room and submit their preferences. Several people had questions and comments first. Quote, "The greatest thing about the rotary is it's big," Jim Badera of Eastham said. "I suggest we leave it as it is." He proposed that the local contractor, Robert Auer, could evaluate the rotary with less cost. Badera, a former chair of the Eastham Planning Board, later told the Times that he favored a large rotary for better visibility, comparing it to a roundabout built on Route 6A in Orleans, near the Lost Dog Pub, which he said is difficult to maneuver. Another man said the project should be postponed to 2035 and asked about the opinions of police and fire officials. Johnson said police and fire officials who had been consulted about different options said that they would not negatively impact their operations. One woman later said she felt residents were cut off from asking questions. Elaine Wright, who lives on Route 6 in Eastham, also told the Times the rotary should be left as is, raising it if necessary and expanding the culverts. She recalled when the rotary was built in the 1950s over wetlands, before there were wetlands restrictions, and her grandmother and great-aunt were very upset. Quote, "Eastham is surrounded by water," Wright said, with a narrow gap between Cape Cod Bay and Town Cove at the rotary. The first alternative plan showed one roundabout replacing the rotary with a signal light where Rock Harbor enters. Johnson said that option would allow the salt marsh to reestablish and improve the wildlife habitat. The second option would have two roundabouts and no signal at Rock Harbor Road, but entrances and exits to the rotary. The third plan will elevate the existing rotary and make the existing culvert bigger, leaving the rotary basically the same, Johnson said. The fourth plan would also have two roundabouts, one off Route 6A in Orleans and the other onto Route 6 toward Eastham. Johnson also said that other locations along Route 6 in Orleans would need to be addressed for flooding, likely with a berm or seawall. Another meeting on the rotary proposals will be held in Orleans at a date to be determined in early June, and in a larger venue, Johnson said. He acknowledged that the Eastham meeting should have been in a larger space, but state transportation officials hadn't expected the larger turnout. Many of those who attended left quickly after Johnson's presentation, as a large number had to stand at the back of the room, and it was difficult to get around to the smaller renderings. The library meeting room was made to hold 120 people, a library employee said Friday, but the setup for the screen, the easels, and the two large tables limited the seating to much less. Library Director Melanie McKenzie said state employees asked her to set up for 60 seats and some tables for the meeting and leave the space around the outside, which accounted for the crowded situation. End of article. Next article, Massachusetts lawmakers may put $25 million toward PFAS-free firefighter gear. An article by Brad Patrician from the Worcester Telegram Gazette. A sweeping $4 billion bond issue passed by the state Senate contains $25 million that would help fire departments purchase turnout gear free of toxic forever chemicals. At the same time, a federal lawsuit in Montana could become a vehicle for recovery for states buying new gear, a lawyer involved in the case told the Telegram and Gazette. The $25 million provision is tied to the Mass Ready Act, the large environmental bill that would, among other things, ban plastic bags in stores. The act, which is not yet passed the House, was passed by senators April 15th. State Senator Michael O. Moore, D. Milbury, filed an amendment before passage asking for funding to help cities and towns buy PFAS-free turnout gear. Moore has for years worked with firefighters on issues surrounding PFAS. Moore partnered with fire unions and Diane Cotter, the Worcester firefighter's wife, who uncovered the use of PFAS in turnout gear, to pass landmark legislation banning PFAS in gear sold in Massachusetts by 2027. Concern on Cape Cod and Nantucket. In 2022, a Hyannis Fire Department firefighter joined Fall River and Nantucket firefighters to participate in tests measuring PFAS absorption from turnout gear sponsored by the Nantucket PFAS Action Group, a coalition that educates and provides resources about the impacts the chemicals had on the island. The group received a grant from the University of Massachusetts Toxic Use Reduction Institute, TURI, to gather more information on PFAS in firefighting gear and its effects on those who wear it. There's definitely a lack of clarity with the long-term effects of PFAS, Hyannis Fire Chief Peter Burke said in 2022. Quote, any chance we have to get some actionable information, we're going to take it, end quote. Moore initially proposed a $125 million amendment to the bond bill, which he said would get close to paying for 2 sets for all firefighters in the state. Moore said Senate leadership, citing a cap on how much borrowing could be done through the bill, supported a $25 million figure. He noted that nothing prevents legislation from being filed in the future seeking additional funding. Quote, we've got to start somewhere, he said. If passed, the $25 million would be administered through grants from the state, which would also, according to the language in the bill, be allowed to put some of the money toward the disposal of PFAS-contaminated equipment and research for safer turnout gear. There is no specific earmark for how much of the $25 million would go to each cause. Moore said he believes the state should explore any avenues to recoup funding from companies that sold the PFAS-laden gear, a request to A.G. Campbell in 2023. Moore and other lawmakers asked Attorney General Andrea Campbell in 2023 to join civil lawsuits regarding PFAS or to investigate gear makers and chemical companies for deceptive trade practices. Moore told the paper her office assured him it was confident that Massachusetts would be covered in any significant class action litigation. He said he'd like to see a proactive approach. PFAS litigation has exploded nationally, and a federal lawsuit in Montana appears poised to become the main potential avenue of recovery for cities and towns buying PFAS-free turnout gear. Cities and towns from 5 states, including Connecticut, have signed on to the lawsuit, which aspires to be a class action representing firefighters in 50 states. Jennifer Sklar, a partner at Silver, Golub, and Title LLP, a Connecticut law firm pursuing the case, told the paper that the plaintiffs ultimately seek 2 pairs of PFAS-free turnout gear for every firefighter in the country. Sklar noted that unlike the federal government, cities and towns can't operate with a deficit and will be hit hard by buying replacement gear at up to $4,500 a set. Quote, the idea that people who sold contaminated gear are going to profit off their wrongdoing is outrageous, said Sklar, whose lawsuit alleges companies that sold the gear concealed the dangers despite being aware of the risks. The lawsuit names chemical manufacturer 3M and several gear companies, including Lion Gear and Globe. One of its legal theories involves the Racketeer Influence and Corruption Organization Act. The Montana federal judge overseeing the case in January denied motions by the defendants to dismiss the case, including requests to dismiss the RICO claims. While a nationwide class action has yet to be certified, Sklar said the judge's rulings indicate willingness to entertain the idea of hosting the litigation in Montana. Sklar noted that multiple firms that handle PFAS-related lawsuits are working together on the lawsuit and that they are actively looking for plaintiffs from other states to join. Sklar said she has not spoken to Campbell about the issue, but hopes at some point to get plaintiffs representing Massachusetts. End of article. Final article. Judge orders Eastham home overlooking beach demolished. D-Day for an Eastham house on the edge of a cliff above Nauset Light Beach has come. A Barnstable Superior Court judge ordered 157 Brownell Road in Eastham to be demolished. The town asked for an injunction ordering the demolition of the house because of health and safety concerns. The April 14th order by Judge Michael A. Cahilnane includes demolition of the septic system and any associated infrastructure, according to court documents. Owner David Moot was given 10 days to comply with the injunction, after which the town was authorized to hire a contractor to demolish the structure. The single-family home sits just feet from the cliff edge overlooking Nauset Light Beach. Moot bought the 1,422-square-foot home on December 1st, 2023 for $395,000. At the time, the house was just about 25 feet away from the cliff edge. By late 2025, storms had eaten away all but 10 feet of land between the house and the cliff. In November 2012 interview, Moot said he understood that erosion would eventually claim the home, but he thought he'd have several years to enjoy it. I knew the house would eventually be gone, he said in a November 24th interview, but claimed he was deceived about the rate of erosion. The description said erosion was on the average of 3 to 5 feet a year. The ocean hasn't cooperated with that timeline. It's been a perfect storm for Moot, the town, and by extension, the Cape Cod National Seashore. Moot lives in Philadelphia. Town officials by then had spent a year asking about his plans to safeguard the property and beach just below it. The town said he was hard to contact and didn't respond to their inquiries. Moot put the property on the market for $99,000, but blamed the town officials for thwarting interest of potential buyers. Moot isn't the only property that the town wants demolished. A nuisance order and order to demolish have also been given to the owners of 153 Brownell Road. Richard and Nancy Hayes bought the property in 2025 for $100,000. A month later, they transferred the property to the Cliff House LLC, a real estate corporation that Richard Hayes is listed as manager for the owners. The owners have been accessible, Greenberg Lemos said in a February 10th select board meeting. Calls to David Moot and town officials weren't immediately returned. And that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. See you next time.